all serious.
We don't even know what we're talking about.
All right, so what I've been noticing lately within the social change is that with millennials, first of all, we've seen our grandparents, we've seen the baby boomer generation, and that was great. But we're seeing
generation?
Baby boomer.
Baby boomers.
You know what the baby boomer is?
Yeah.
So after the white people dropped the
I know
bomb.
that.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay. Just making sure.
Getting real racial up in here.
Anyways, we saw the divorce rate.
Just a little mumbling there, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just be clear.
We saw the divorce. We saw the divorce rate go way up, and now we're seeing millennials not get married at all. So almost like
Millennials, yeah.
Millennials. We have to define millennials, or do you guys feel comfortable with what a
millennials are anyone born from 18 or 1987 to now, right?
Yeah, well.
Or no, to 2000.
2002 or something.
Yeah, 2002.
So millennials 1980. We're seeing marriage decline. Like people don't want to, at least especially people that aren't LDS,
Yeah.
Especially LDS.
No, especially people who aren't LDS don't want to get married.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got to think about the atmosphere and the environment of the ages back then, right? Because back in the day, especially with baby boomers,
right?
Let's just say that if you wanted the milk, you had to buy the cow.
I totally agree, because that's a popular thing.
So now we live in a society where, in order to have sex, you don't necessarily need to get married.
No, you can just rent the cow.
So that's one benefit, right?
Right. You can rob or rent. Either way, you're getting the milk, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's stop using that analogy. Well, that's one.
Some people prefer low fat, but that's fine.
I would say people see as a benefit, right? Is that the sexual liberation? Now, I'm not saying it is or isn't right now, but that's how people feel.
I agree with that, partially, because people who do get married, it's not until their late 30s, I think, or
people can.
And I think they use that analogy, yes, the milk's free, why not? And then they finally give in at the end. They're like, you know what? I just kind of want someone there. Mm-hmm. I think it's more like a loneliness.
Well, I mean, that's one aspect, right? But you also think culturally too. Really, Western culture and brought from the Europe and stuff before that. They were the ones that kind of introduced marriage as you have to do this in order to be together. And other cultures down in Brazil or natives is the idea of marriage. Not all places, but a lot of them. I was actually looking at this the other day. Was that their form of marriage was more of a financial relationship first. So I have someone to take care of my kids at home, or I have someone to hunt or gather, or I have someone to do this or that. And then maybe an emotional relationship may build from there. So there's also that aspect.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I like that approach, because that's honestly, I heard people in the original days, they got married for power, they got married for money, or they got married for sex, basically. That's what it was. And you're saying the Westerners started this idea where you just have to get married no matter what?
I wouldn't say Westerners started, but they definitely popularized that idea.
Okay, so this made it bigger. Mm-hmm. So when you say, one thing that fascinates me is, it seems to be a completely different thing from the world, is that Americans focus that you should be married to someone that you love. Where the rest of the world sees you should be married to someone that has a benefit, that brings you up with something else that they have, like money or power.
Yeah, other parts of the world are they're not afraid to weigh objective pros and cons in form of a marriage. They have a nice family, they're objectively beautiful, so good kids,
right?
This and that comes from a culture of individualism versus collectivism, right?
Right.
Because this marriage can help us as a whole, and then versus me as an individual, I want who I want.
Okay, and you're saying Americans are more individual, right?
Western culture is more individualistic than other, let's say, Eastern cultures or Middle Eastern cultures.
More communist-like, would you say? Kind of this.
Not necessarily communist, just collectivist as far as values.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So do you think you should get married for love, or do you think it's
I definitely believe in marriage.
Uh-huh.
However, I am very, very surprised, and I think people are dumb, especially in the LDS culture, when they're like, I'm 21 and I've been dating this girl for 6 months, so let me just get married. No.
Yeah.
We all know the real reason you want to get married is so you get some of that milk, and then you're like, well, I'm just going to be with her and learn to love her. And in one aspect, okay, that's kind of fine, but nah. You should definitely...
No, I totally agree. The Mormon culture is completely wrong. I'm a member of the church.
It's completely wrong.
No, the culture. The church.
The gospel's not...
The gospel, I believe, is 100%. It's just the people just can't seem to follow it right, I've seen people that get off their mission, they get married a month or two later. And I'm like, you really can't know someone a month or two later enough to be with them for 40 years or so, let alone for eternity,
That's very, very true. And I think a lot of marriages in the LDS faith do work. I think the vast majority. But there's a lot of problems in a lot of marriages that they get worked out, which is fine, but I think a lot of problems that wouldn't have been avoided altogether if you would have spent more time with that person. I have a friend who's in a relationship with someone right now, and I'm like, and he wants to get married. He's not looking to get married right away, but he's dating the interest of marry her.
Majority of the school.
And then but no, he's dating the serious intention to marry, and I was like, dude, you have to make her upset because he's never seen her upset. Like, you have to see what she's like, because she's kind of an interesting person. Let's just put it that way. And I just, you have to make sure.
I don't know if I want to make women upset, because I mean,
no,
that's
you have to know what she's like.
I'd prefer someone else to get that woman upset than me. I'd rather see her mad at someone else than me.
I'm not saying he has to go out and make her upset. He has to be in a position to see her get upset.
Right, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But my whole point was before, yes, you should probably date someone a bit longer than 3 months to know what you're getting yourself into.
You gotta kind of pass that.
I dated a girl for 3 years before we started talking about marriage, and it didn't happen. So.
My biggest reason why the LDS religions have gone so far is because I believe there's like the church, they do more of an emphasis of why people should stay together. I mean, yes, they make it more of a commandment or so, but they really put this idea out there that any two couple that are willing to follow the gospel can work out their marriage together.
That's true.
And I actually
that's true.
I do believe that because my parents, they got married at 17 and 18 in a way,
Mm-hmm.
They got pregnant at a very young age. And they're like the 1% that made it, that are still married today from everyone else.
Well, if we're still gonna talk about like LDS culture, who gave the talk about good, better, and best? Right?
I know there's a talk. I read a book on that.
The concept. I'm forgetting it, but it's the same thing, right? Any two people who are willing to make it work can make it work.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can have a good relationship no matter what you do, as long as you're doing it for the good relationship. You have two people willing to do that. But then you have a better relationship with someone else that you could have, and maybe a best if you're willing to put that out.
So is that how you're viewing marriage? Like, is that why? I don't want me to make fun of you, but is that why you're single now? I mean, you see a lot of good opportunities now, but you're just looking for the best one, right?
Well, yeah, you have to be selective. I mean, if you're going LDS, right? If you're going a member of the Church of Jesus Christ,
right?
This is someone we believe that you're going to spend eternity with.
Right. So you better like him, or at least
you gotta like him, right? Now, if you're gonna go out, let's go outside of that, just like legality, right? A lot of people don't want to get married because, one, they don't want the government to define their relationship.
I agree with that. If I wasn't part of the church, I'd probably be in that crowd.
It's one way. Two, there's a lot of people that have financial success and don't want the threat of
it being taken
someone
away.
Kind of taking that away,
Which
is a legitimate concern.
No, I totally, because I've heard stories where a man decides hey, I just don't want to have a wife anymore. Next thing you know, he's paying her alimony for the rest of his life.
Yep.
And that's racking up to millions of dollars at the end,
At the end of it all, yeah, that could be a very good thing.
Right.
And I think the general appeal of marriage has been changed away from the spirituality and more the practicality. In a lot of ways, marriage is practical, but in a lot of ways it kind of isn't, because you're forced into a commitment. And no matter what you say, how beneficial a commitment is, there are people that look at a commitment as impractical.
Right.
As a majority.
That's what I think.
What do you think, Ohi?
Yeah, that's what I think what's wrong with societies today is that commitments.
I agree.
People don't follow them.
No, these chairs are kind of too noisy.
Yeah, I wanted to get better chairs, but the library wouldn't give me.
So what's up? Growing up on the island, how do they feel about marriage, man?
I know. Did you guys why are you single today? You looking for better, best, or is it more
of course, obviously.
You looking for a girl that watches anime? What's your good here, man?
What's your qualities, bro?
What's your qualities?
I see. Okay, interview. Yeah, I agree with what Jonathan says.
Because you have a nice truck.
Is that it?
Is that it?
That's it.
Let's elaborate.
You got the job. You got that a nice little place to live.
Yeah. So what are you trying to say?
You're just missing the girl. What's wrong?
Not for 100% personally, but for your circumstances.
Yeah.
Given that framework, what do you think about marriage?
I mean.
Given about marriage. So marriage is a.
We're gonna come back to Ohi. We're gonna not talk to Ohi anymore.
I don't like telling him it's recording because he was able to speak more.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just say whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So marriage is in Hawaii.
Do they have a weird tradition? Because I know in Tonga they have a weird tradition where they'll get married and then they have a special room for them to go in the next day, and then when they wake up they have to show the sheets or something like that.
No.
No.
But I think Hawaii is really westernized, so it's gonna be pretty similar to like mainland style. Yeah.
What about traditional Hawaiian
Traditional Hawaiian.
marriages?
Do you guys used to throw
I
rice?
don't even know if they even had marriage back.
Maybe
Once the
Yeah.
people
maybe
came
a
here,
form of marriage.
Maybe it's a form of.
maybe
Yeah.
it was probably a form of marriage because I know a lot of the chiefs, they had many wives back in the days, and they ended up having
So,
many children, and you know.
Do you know how the natives viewed marriage as more of like a spiritual thing, more of a social thing? Because I mean, let's go back to monarchies, right? Marriage is a political move. It's not anything about love. You marry this person to remain status,
Right.
to have power. So maybe that's one way. I mean, one reason why monarchies or people have multiple wives is
So some kind of.
it's a show of power.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have the resources to take care of these many people.
I think
Is
that's
that what-
that's
is that
how
what
it
they-
probably was.
They looked at resources. I thought they looked more
No,
like
the-
trophies.
The wives would be, I guess, trophies, but the fact that I have the money, the wealth,
The
resources
wealth,
to
the
take
resources
care
to
of
provide,
these,
yeah.
That makes sense.
these trophies.
That makes sense.
So what about
They
what
have
about
the land,
for,
you know, they have the land to take care of.
Hey, that's probably how
what about the commoner?
Brigham Kimball though. Whatever.
Well, the counter,
What about the commoner as far as marriage? Anything going up that you ask about your
I
family?
never really.
You
I don't really know about what the commoners traditionally.
practiced
Practiced.
or what they viewed it as?
I'm sure they had some sort of, you know,
Some sort of
some sort
team
of
system.
team
yeah?
system. Maybe they had like set, you know, planned marriages or something.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just unspoken.
Yeah, unspoken.
One thing I found interesting, I was learning of the reason why women take the last name of men, and basically it came from Europe.
Okay, well, yeah, that seems to be a European because I know
It's a European thing, but the
wasn't it
reason
like
why
the
is
South
because
Americans used to combine the names at one point. Now that weren't out. That's why they're like so long now.
well that's I know that trend's more modern, but maybe back in the day in other
Okay.
countries they might have done that. But I know as far as the United States, the Western influence came from Europe. Back in the day, and I forget which century, like 9th century or whatever,
Okay.
there's a lot of people. So when you have 50 million Johns, or not 50 million, you have 50,000 Johns, that's when they gave people last names in the first place. Before, at least European style, Western style, it was a single name thing until they gave them a surname. And then after a while, they're like, there's too many surnames. So when people would eventually get married or just partner up, as people do, they would just combine the name, and they chose the male for that. Then over time, so that was kind of the practicality of it.
But why the male? You just said they come together. Why
They come together. So women were viewed back in the day as an extension of the male.
Okay, so then
So
that's
as the provider, so it was as the provider and protector,
as the patriarch.
as the patriarch, she became an extension of him.
Okay.
Now, obviously, throughout time, as you tell, that power, I guess, position was abused in a lot of ways. But I don't know to say the foundation of it was I guess, benign in the sense of.
So is that why
property.
Europeans have middle names too? Because that's one thing I've noticed. Like, it seems like Europeans are the only ones that have middle names as well. Do you have a middle
Yeah,
name?
I do.
Oh, you do, for real?
Yeah.
Well, Islanders have many names, right?
Yeah.
Can have many names, or one
It's like-
super long name.
Super long name,
Yeah.
which is like
A
combination
combination
of different ancestors in there.
different ancestors.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And,
I thought, yeah.
And then I know for like Aotearoa, traditionally when you introduce someone, you would say like
Oh,
your
your whole
ancestors
yeah.
ancestors name and then you. So you could say that since you have to do that, that's part of your name as well.
Yeah. I remember them doing that a lot down in Aotearoa.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So marriage is it's definitely, you could say it's dying. That's true.
Yeah.
But what's growing is the divorce rate.
Which is weird because you think, because now the marriage rate is going down, but the divorce rate is going up.
Well, you have to think too. This also ties in back to women's rights, right? So divorce was also looked down on, as looked as a failed marriage and a failing of both, but mostly the wife in a lot of ways.
So they put all the blame on the wife of a marriage.
A lot
failed.
of times.
Why do
yes.
you think they did that?
Yeah, I 100% I don't know because I wasn't there. And I'm
Right,
not
I
from
know,
that
but
time.
you-
But if I would had to guess, so like back in the day, right? I was like the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
So there's an instance where he meets his lover she was divorced.
Right.
And they play a scene where people were like looking at her with disgust because she had the audacity to break a covenant of God.
Right. I mean, I can
by
see how
divorcing.
people look at women and think, oh, they're divorced, their value drops.
Their value drops, but it's also like you break that because back in the day that covenant, people respected. I wouldn't say more people back in the day believed in God, but they sure acted like it. And
I
they gave
think
certain things
your word was
reverence.
stronger back then, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of people's word was stronger back then, and so that break. But now the fact that people are in power and if you look at marriage and it changes, that whole act changes divorce in and of itself. So if marriage is not that more important, divorce is a more viable option. So you can therefore leave whatever situation you're in, right? So look at how many people that let's be honest. There's probably a lot of people back in the day that should have got divorced. They weren't in a good marriage. But because of a social stigma, they were kind of forced to kind of be in there.
I mean, I heard stories about the men beating the wives and stuff like that. That's a good reason to get a divorce. But at the same time, I'm like, you got married, it's agreed that you guys would work out each other's flaws. You guys know each other's flaws, and you guys are going to fix each other's flaws. That's the whole point of marriage, in my opinion. It's not just for the benefits of the money and the race, but you know that you're both imperfect, and you're both agreeing to be with each other as imperfect as you guys are.
True, but when imperfections start risking bodily health,
that's when a separation happens. But do you think it's
separation and then eventually a divorce, especially if no one's... Because remember, this is predicated... You're thinking of someone's trying to do their best. What if someone's not trying to do their best?
No, I agree. But then again,
it's like you can't help someone who can't help themselves.
Yeah, if they're not willing to help themselves in that way, then yeah, I'd agree that a divorce.
And so why should someone sacrifice their life for someone who's just trying to drag them down?
But for me, that's the only reason I could see a divorce. Because, I mean,
you
go through the stage of
too.
dating, of courtship, of all this time you spent and invested with the other person.
I mean, that's an assumption right there. What happens if one night stand impregnates someone because of social pressure?
Well, I think if a one night stand, you don't have to you shouldn't get married because because you have a kid.
So like the essence right there. So there's so many people one night stand or maybe a few night stands, or maybe just a casual relationship.
Yeah.
Pregnant and they themselves get married because of the stigma of it, and then so it's not a healthy relationship at all to begin with. Yeah. In fact, there's also women who get pregnant to try to fix a relationship as well.
Yeah, I know. I used to be with women, I think, back then, like teenagers, don't you think? Like high school? Or
It could be any...
Oh, yeah, you're right. No, sorry, I
didn't... And especially men, too. Men might try to purposely get a girl pregnant just so they have that connection as well.
Yeah.
And so they use a child for an emotional crutch and a hook to get them, right? So stay with me for the sake of our child. So it's definitely an unhealthy way. Because remember, love is one thing, obsession is another thing, and lust is also another thing. Lust and obsession can kind of go intertwined. And so people can get married for different reasons. And so when it's not the right reasons, right? And so that also goes back to like politically and all that stuff. You could also argue that those aren't right reasons either. Even though it could be a happy marriage and you kind of just like, I have this person anyway. But...
No, yeah, I mean, I agree. I guess there are exceptions to divorce. It just seems like that should be like the ultimate... the last,
And I agree with the fact that divorce should be like the last step, but that's why you have to be so picky before.
I agree.
Because that's
avoid it,
you're trying to avoid it, right? So I want to choose someone who I'm willing to give every reasonable chance before it comes to that.
But then,
especially in LDS culture, if you're gonna get sealed in the temple, which you believe is for all time and eternity, it's different for other religions. It's death do you part.
Right? But that's my thing with the whole LDS culture thing. I feel like there's two types of people in this church. There are those that are gonna date for a month and then jump into marriage, and there are those that are just over judgmental. There are those that just like anytime they see a flaw, they're just like, hey, don't want to deal with it.
As far as dating. I like to disagree because I'm not one of those. So ladies, if you hear this, hit me up.
Yeah, but no, I mean the whole marriage thing. But I think people are expecting like their dream spouse kind of thing too much. And
yeah, there's definitely a lot of that, especially here. I think they're trying to find Mr. Perfect.
The perfect one. I think someone needs to lay down the law of reality of what it takes, what it requires to get married, and then what it takes and what it requires to stay married in a way. Like what you're gonna have to go through.
That's very true because as any partnership, it takes work, and people don't like to think about the work. They like to think about the benefits of the work. When you think of fruit, you think of the fruit. You don't think of the person planting the seed, watering the seed, letting it grow, harvesting it.
When you get the milk, you don't think about all the time it took to raise the cow or anything like that. You just think about the milk at the end, right?
Yep. You think about the steak too.
The steak, yeah.
Or the sirloin or the T-bone steak. Oh man, that Wagyu A5. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Heck, nice.
All right. Well.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. No, hey, thanks, Jonathan. That was good. Appreciate your time here and enlightening us
Thank you,
with
Ray.
your ideas and your teachings and facts about marriage.
Teaching the facts.
Teaching the facts about marriage.
I think it's like 53% of marriages are ending in divorce now.
Yeah. No, large percentage. I agree.
So